Hi, everybody. This is Lori Pinhorn, and I am back for another teaching video about acceptance and commitment therapy. And what we're going to be talking about today is our emotions, our capacity to build some acceptance in the emotions that we're experiencing, and how to sort of encourage ourselves to be willing to step into some emotions, and how do we actually create some inner space for the expansion of emotions. And I guess what I want to say about this is that this is not always an easy part of the acceptance and commitment therapy at the beginning of your journey with this. But I also want you to know that as time goes on, this gets a lot easier with some practice. So at the beginning of this, when you're hearing what we're talking about here in this teaching video, I want you to try to put a very thick layer of compassion on yourself and maybe even the people around you as you listen to the content for today. So most of us are kind of unwilling to experience all of our emotions. And so there's probably some really good reasons for that. And we're going to cover most of that here in this teaching video here today. So if you notice that there's a part of you that's unwilling to experience certain emotions, then I want you to know that you're in good company. It's almost the basic human brain patterning and also the basic kind of ways we're programmed to navigate our world that sort of sets us up for this. So unfortunately, what happens is that kind of creates a bit of a struggle, an internal struggle about what's going on emotionally. So here's a little cartoon character called the discomfort monster. And, we're almost always trying to avoid feeling discomfort and discomfort emotions. And so what we're trying to do is do what this little guy who's tethered to the discomfort monster is trying to do, is like, come on, like, I'm going to lead you down this way here. And try not to worry and try not to be so fearful. And we are usually trying to avoid anxiety and worry, shame and fear, those kinds of things, because they do feel uncomfortable. And it really is leaning into these emotions that takes us out of our comfort zone and into a place in our world where we want to go towards. So when we think about the model for acceptance and commitment therapy, here's a little star next to the acceptance and willingness place on the map here. So the reality is that, there's lots of really important parts of acceptance and commitment therapy, and acceptance and willingness is one of those core concepts. And they're all important. And today we're talking about this pivot point, core concept, whatever it is you're comfortable, the language in it. One of the things that I love about this concept, this core concept, is that it really does sort of dip its toe into all of the other core concepts. So, if a value of yours is to live a more happy, calm, centered life, then at practicing this emotional awareness and emotional literacy is something that can be really, really helpful. We sometimes have to practice thought unhooking in order to practice this. Like, a thought that might come along with this is that a thought that we believe, which is, this is too scary, emotions are difficult to deal with, I don't want to do that. And if we practice unhooking from those really scary thoughts, then we have a better chance of doing this piece of work. And also, these thoughts that we have about emotions are programmed thoughts. They're not necessarily who we are. If we are truly accepting the fact that these are just thoughts, these are just emotions, they're neither good nor bad, they are what they are, they're probably here as messengers for us to explore a little bit more, then it might make it a little bit easier for us to kind of go on that journey with our emotions. So it certainly ties in the the self part of acceptance and commitment therapy too, because whatever it is going on with our emotions, we're trying to watch and be curious and compassionate from that witnessing perspective, from that wider perspective. So I like this one because it weaves everything together. So what if we started to think about our emotions in this way? And I love talking about hiking trails. I love to hike, and lots of people I know love to hike too. And Newfoundland and Labrador is a fantastic place to be a hiker. And I'm just going to invite you to think about this, is that what if we reframed this emotion is really bad, I want to run away from it, I don't want to feel it, to, oh, this is interesting. I wonder what would happen if I took this trail. Maybe the outcome might be that I might go on a beautiful journey on a side of a hill, and I might have amazing views, and there might be amazing people, and I might learn something fantastic about myself, and I might learn something fantastic about the, I don't know, the ecosystem or the vegetation or the views that I get to see if I go down this trail. So this is my invitation to you, is, can we start to think about our emotions as a trailhead, and maybe we can witness something new if we go down this trailhead. Maybe we'll learn something new about myself personally, or maybe about my interactions with people and things like that. That it's an invitation for growth when the emotions pop up. And I've certainly been in those experiences myself personally. Had a few kind of big trigger situations happen to me over the last couple, months, I guess, with triggers around COVID and illness and stress and things like that. And if we're willing to kind of look at those kinds of uncomfortable emotions as invitations for the next layer of growth for us, things can be pretty exciting. And like I say in all the teaching videos, what we're encouraging people to practice are the same concepts that we're practicing all the time, that we wouldn't be able to teach people or encourage people to live their life through the lens of acceptance and commitment therapy and nervous system work if we weren't practicing it ourselves. And I guess from my heart to yours, I want you to kind of just invite that opportunity for growth when these emotions pop up. And maybe if we leaned into it, some amazing things could happen. So emotions are like trailheads. Like, that's interesting. I wonder what's down here. I wonder what I'll see if I choose to go down this path. So accepting, this is, some of us are very much experts at trying to avoid feeling uncomfortable emotions. And we have to accept that us humans, that we are hardwired to avoid pain, physical pain, emotional pain. It's really normal for us to say, no, I think this might hurt, so I'm going to avoid that. Like, it is a primitive human survival response in our brain to think that avoiding pain is the best thing for us. And let's be honest, it is. If you fell down and you broke your ankle today, that pain would keep you off your foot, and you'd heal better. And if I had a hot element here in front of you and said, hey, I think you should, put your finger on that hot element, you'd say no, because it would hurt. And, who wants to move towards suffering? It's a survival instinct. It's a human instinct. It's weaved into our DNA to avoid pain, physical pain, mostly. Unfortunately, what we've also done for us as humans, because we learned really early, or our culture has sort of encouraged us to do this, we've overlaid that pain avoidance on the internal experiences that we have, and also the emotional experiences that we have. And so if something is going to be uncomfortable, what we do most of the time is just turn around and go in the opposite direction. And so this is where this becomes, I guess, a layer of suffering for us as humans. If you've watched some of the other teaching videos, we often talk about, it's going to be human is to experience a certain layer of suffering, and there's no way around that. That's the dukkha. the Sanskrit word for suffering and struggle. And what we know is that this internal avoidance of emotions is creating extra dukkha for us. So if we grew up in environments where in home or school environments where we weren't encouraged to feel our feelings and express our emotions, if we were taught to shut down emotions and things like that, this is difficult process for us because we've got this internal pairing of, well, I'm sad. I was told either very directly, don't cry, or somebody, maybe an adult or a caregiver around us said like, yeah, we just don't have time for that now. I don't want to hear it. Like, pull it together, those kinds of things. If we've had those emotion teachings for us, and most of us in our North American world, let's be honest, that's the experience that we had. This is difficult. And I think that even if we lived in utopias where everybody's experiences were allowed and things like that, this still would be a tough one. And there's been some interesting research recently. If you follow Brene Brown at all, she actually was, researching and studying hundreds and thousands of people about their emotional awareness. And quite generally, if we ask them, how do you feel about this situation or whatever, people can kind of come up with three emotions: happy, sad, or pissed off. And that is, where that's three emotions that people are pretty comfortable with labeling. And we have hundreds and hundreds of different versions of emotions floating around in us all day long. And so our emotional literacy is pretty limited when it comes to how do we talk about emotions, feel emotions, sense them in our bodies, and all of that stuff. So the human experience, the human programming, and the cultural experiences has left most of us a little bit in a deficit when it comes to this area. So if you feel like that, I want you to know that you are in good company. But we're going to try to do things in a different way. So here's the thing is that we can't fix what's not broken. And when we grew up in a world, or we still live in a world where we label some emotions as good and some emotions as bad, what happens is when we experience what we have labeled as the bad emotions, then we wonder what's wrong with me because I experienced the bad emotions. And we're really trying to do a pivotal change here with the reality is that because you experience unpleasant emotions doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, that the suffering that we experience might be coming from the thought or the over-identification with the thought of what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why aren't I happy all the time? And then we go into avoidance mode of those emotions because we don't know what's happening or we don't know what's wrong. And when these emotions come back again, and when they come back again, and the thoughts that are paired with those emotions will always come back, mostly because we've got a brain that's programmed to be triggered with things that are paired, we have paired with traumatic situations or unhappy situations and things like that. And we over focus on the negative things and we see the negative things more. So wham, they are going to come back and they are going to come back. So we're trying really hard to control this thing that's always coming back by avoiding it or getting angry at it. And we're struggling with it. And so what if we could put our hands on our hearts and say, wow, that's just my brain and my nervous system doing its job. There's nothing broken in me. What level of suffering would that assist you with? Would you be left with the idea that I'm just having an experience here, that there's nothing broken in me? So trying to kind of control the trigger or the response to the trigger, or trying to control your reaction to situations is sometimes not necessarily the way out of this. It's to explore what the emotion is about, to give the experience some air and to talk about it and think about what it might be connected to, why it's here, how long has it been here, what does it want you to know, what does it want you to learn, what does it want you to let go of so that you can have some peace and clarity and compassion in your life. That is the way that we go through these experiences, not by being at war with them and trying to avoid them. So here is the fancy word of what avoidance is. And we call it in the counseling world experiential avoidance. It's the human nature. So it's a curious fact that doing what matters to us isn't always and straightforward. Why is this? It's because we get on the journey of doing the thing that's important to us, and then we hit a barrier and a block, and then we turn around and go in the opposite direction. Or we're going on our journey and an experience happens where an unpleasant emotion or a negative event or an unpleasant event pops up, and then we turn in the opposite direction. And, if you have some long-term goals for your wellness or for your health or for a thing that you're trying to accomplish into your future, where there's many steps, A, B, and C to do it, it's impossible to not come up against any barriers. And it's a human experience to say, oh, this is hard, this is tough, this is unpleasant, and so I should turn around and go in the opposite direction. So our job is to sort of just kind of watch when that's happening and kind of come up with a formula for, well, how am I going to hop over this barrier or go around this barrier, and actually lean into the experience of the emotion that comes along with this, or accept that it's here. Maybe even make a plan for the fact that it is going to show up, and what are we going to do if and when it shows up. That is a fantastic thought process when we're trying to create a set of long-term goals for ourselves. And so here's just an example, I'm here recording this video here today. I'm a bit worried about the fact that all the slides are not perfect. Maybe there's spelling errors in there. Maybe the recording doesn't go well. Maybe the dog is going to bark in the middle of the recording. And if I really hooked on to all of those things, didn't accept and prepare myself for all of that stuff that's going to come, I probably wouldn't be here teaching this video here today. So, when we kind of accept that there are going to be struggles that come with things, and how are we going to plan for that? What are we going to do about it? Then there actually is less avoidance of things. And that might be the reason why you're kind of curious about, well, why do I start things and stop? Why do I start things and stop? So we kind of get curious about the fact that, we've got these long-term or short-term intentions for ourselves, and sometimes they don't happen. And sometimes we stop before we even start because we know something's going to be difficult. And that's a deeply human experience. So there is function in our avoidance. That's what I was just talking about. The experiential avoidance means being unwilling to experience unwanted or uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or body sensations. Like maybe we don't want to go for a walk because we don't want to strain ourselves walking up a hill. We don't want to do a yoga class because we hate the sensation that comes in our body with stretching, or we don't want to chop those vegetables because it's just too much of a pain in order to do that. So we avoid kind of doing those things, or we avoid having these hard but serious and important conversations with people because we're afraid of the uncomfortableness that's going to arise out of that. And those things are really counterproductive to us, right? So then we avoid them. And this is sometimes what it is that's keeping us stuck. It's almost like there's a part of us that pops up and says, you don't want to do that, that's going to be a lot of work, or you don't want to do that, that's going to be kind of painful, or why would you do that? You're going to have to get up out of bed early in the morning in order to get onto your yoga mat or whatever. So there's a lot of unwillingness to experience uncomfortableness. And if we kind of decide that, yeah, I am going to experience this little bit of discomfort because it's worth it to me, then the lights come on and motivation increases and we feel better about ourselves. So there's all kinds of strategies that decrease unpleasant feelings in the short term. Also, at the same time, they lower the quality of our life over the long term. And we get caught in this unhealthy sort of avoidance behavior patterns. And so if we read down through this list and you think about yourself, or you think about people that you care about, and you're seeing these kinds of behaviors happening, the functionality of these behaviors is to help you not feel these uncomfortable things that come along with life or with not doing them. So we use alcohol to give us short-term relief from unpleasant emotions and situations. Drugs, gambling, overeating, oversitting, over shopping, over caretaking of other people, overuse of social media, being scared to move outside of our comfort zones. We avoid going to school, or we avoid going out to places to see people. And we avoid having difficult conversations with folks, especially our, our workmates or our family people or things like that. Even though we're uncomfortable in the situation, we avoid those conversations. So what I want you to know is that if you're witnessing and you have this capacity to say, oh yeah, I'm doing some of this stuff, I also want you to know that you're in really good company. But what you are probably witnessing there is avoidance behavior patterns. And I also want you to know that there's a way to reduce these behaviors, because a lot of these behaviors too are costing us a lot of emotional energy, physical energy. We're losing out on the life that we love because we're really overinvested in these avoidance behaviors. And they kind of take us away from the life that we live and the life that we want and the life that we hope for. And the the short solution to this is to maybe put some energy and some practice into leaning into the emotion that you're trying to avoid. It actually, in the long run, might be very, very helpful for us. So it's just an invitation to think about it in a different way. So here's how we're sort of set up to avoid. We have been taught, and I still see this happening. I was in a guidance counselor's office not too long ago in a meeting, and saw a poster on the wall about, well, here's good emotions and here's bad emotions. And so we're trying to move away from that polarization and think about treating all emotions as equal, that they're messengers. They're not good or bad, and that when we set ourselves up with evil and good, what happens is we get at war with the evil ones. And then that sort of says, well, they're bad. Maybe we might even say in our heads, there might even be a part of us that says that there must be something wrong with me or bad with me because I'm experiencing these emotions. And unfortunately, some of us have had experiences where we feel shamed because we even have these emotions. What's wrong with you? How come you're experiencing this? And then layered on top of that is this heavy weight of shame because you are an emotional human being. Humans are deeply emotional, and to feel shame for certain emotions is a heavy burden to carry around with you for the rest of your life. So if we can start to move more towards acceptance that all emotions are equal, none are good, none are bad, they are what they are, they're messengers, it moves us away from this happiness trap where I'm trying to only feel good, I'm never going to feel those other emotions ever again, and we're struggling with them or whatever. This can really create a significant amount of peace to say there's nothing wrong with me, I'm experiencing these emotions. That's really interesting. I'm very curious, I'm very compassionate about what it is that I'm witnessing. Those are way more wellness driven thoughts than what's wrong with me kinds of things. So we're trying to move away from the polarization, use emotions as they're all equal, neither good nor bad. So emotions are good or bad. They're signals. They're signals that the body has, our body's bringing our attention to something, maybe letting you know that something is a little off kilter, out of balance. And let's just ask ourselves, what is this feeling trying to tell me? If I'm feeling really stressed, maybe the message is I need to slow down. I need to unhook from the thing that I'm doing right now. I need a little bit of self-care. I need to go for a walk, or I need to kind of prioritize things. If you're feeling really overwhelmed, like the best next thing is the message feeling overwhelmed is that you have to stop, put things down, maybe go for a walk, go for a little run, listen to some great music, go get a drink of water or do something. Feeling really overwhelmed is the message that just stop, Take a breath. Do something that your nervous system loves. If when we push through overwhelm, nobody benefits. If we're feeling sad, maybe the message is, it's okay. You're sad because there's there's something really important happening to you, or you actually are looking for some connection, joy, and gratitude about something in your life. And if you're feeling anxious, the message is, maybe I just need to breathe, I need to ground, I need to remind myself that I'm safe and that I can manage this, and things like that. So our emotions are messengers to us. So there's two sides of the coin, and acceptance of there's this duality in life, dichotomy in life, and the yin and yang symbol is a fantastic example of that. We can't separate these two parts of this symbol. This symbol is ancient. It's been around for a really, really long time. And even if you do separate them, there is going to be a little bit of the white and the black, and a little bit of the black and the white. It's impossible to separate. And so the wonderful thing about emotions and this symbol is that it's a really great analogy, is that, like, no matter what situation you're in, there's going to be a hard energy to it, and there's going to be a fantastic light, airy, spiritual energy to it. And emotions are the same thing. We can't separate them. So to experience happiness, we also have to have already experienced sadness, or at least risk sadness. And so to experience growth, we have to experience discomfort. There's just no way around that. Growth and discomfort live together in the same arena. Happiness and sadness live together in the same arena. So if we only want to feel happiness, then we are never ever really truly accepting of the reality that sadness comes along for the ride. It's possibly a risk for that, so there's always a light and a dark energy in every situation. We can't separate them. To witness a rainbow, we have to live through some rain. Is the reason why we are so sad when people that we love pass on. We love them so much. That's why we are so sad. We are so sad because we love them so much. So it's this reality that we cannot separate these two things when it comes to life situations, and also to the emotional domain. Things come along for the ride. I had a conversation with a young person the other day using this symbol about, having groups of friends. It's wonderful to have groups of friends, and that's the light, airy part about this. And then there's going to be some discomfort that comes along with having groups of friends, which is, I need to negotiate who I'm going to spend time with, and I have to learn how to be a good communicator. And there's going to be this uncomfortable thought around, well, am I doing things right? And am I offending anybody? And I hope people like me, and all of that stuff. Like, if you were home in the basement by yourself and you had no friends, you wouldn't be worried about those kinds of thoughts, but maybe you would be worried about other thoughts, like, well, why don't I have any friends, and all of that stuff. So, like, there is this dichotomy of light and dark that comes along with everything. So acceptance and willingness means that we don't, get to choose how our brains and nervous systems work in our world. And we're going to think certain ways due to our experiences, either past or current, or traumas that we've had. And our nervous system responds to stressors, that we have a negatively biased brain, and we're going to kind of lift up the crap in situations before we lift up the lightness in things. And we overthink, and we get stuck in problem solving. And that's what the human brain does. That's the acceptance piece of this. But are we willing to kind of use that over focus on some of those things as little messengers, or I guess little knocks on your subconscious or consciousness to say, hey, maybe it's okay for me to not think this thought right now, or separate from the thought, or unhook from it, or whatever. So It also means opening up and making room for unpleasant feelings, sensations, urges, and emotions. So here's an example, if you're going to quit smoking, there's a very good chance you're going to have cravings. If you're going to quit alcohol, there's a very good chance you're going to have cravings. If you want to have less social media time, there's a pretty good chance you're going to miss out on things, right? So, and maybe you're going to feel left out or whatever that, can we prepare and make room for those things as opposed to trying to suppress them and push them away? It also, acceptance and willingness means that we drop the struggle with the emotions and give them space to breathe, allow them to just be, and use them as, ask ourselves some curious questions about them. So by instead of fighting them and then resisting them and running from them and getting overwhelmed by them, we want to just be open to what might be and what is coming up. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy about it or you're wanting this uncomfortable situation. It merely means that you're making room for them to explore things. So the opposite of avoidance is acceptance, willingness, and expansion of our feelings and emotions and experiences. And so in the ACT model, what we practice is step one, which is first, let's just acknowledge I am feeling whatever it is. Or you can acknowledge that I am feeling a couple of things. It doesn't have to be one thing. I am feeling sad. I am feeling happy and relieved all at the same time. We just have to pause, put our feet on the floor and acknowledge I am experiencing this. And instead of fighting it, just accept that it's here. It's not going to last forever, but for here right now, it is here. And let's just let the emotion be here and let it be. The Beatles had something to say about that. Let it be, let it be. And sometimes when we just let things be, it's the beginning of letting things go and moving on and recovery from experiences that we've had. And the let it be part is the scary piece of this for some folks. And it's always nice to have somebody guide you through those processes of breathing through emotions, riding waves of emotions and things like that, because emotions will not last forever. That's something that our brain has created for us, is like, we don't want to believe that emotions have waves, that they have beginnings, that they build energy, that they have a peak and a crest, and then they will eventually slide away, just like a wave. And we think that, because an emotion starts, it's going to overwhelm us and it's going to crush us and it's never going to stop. And that's not the reality. Is like when we start to practice craving surfing, emotional surfing, and all of that stuff, that's a very compassionate witnessing. I am not this emotion. This emotion is here for a visit right now. And I can still do things even with the emotion here. Those are messages that are in this core concept of ACT. I am not the emotion. The emotion is here for a visit. So when we start doing this, our survival brain might want to take over. And when we start to lean into emotions that don't necessarily feel comfortable or experience emotions, we have to prepare ourselves for the fact that our primitive brain might actually activate fight or flight. That reaction of, no, I want to move away from this, could be something that you experience. You might notice a part of you says, don't do this. This is scary. You don't want to do this. Like, best avoid this conversation in this situation. We are famous. We are experts at that. And so if you start to do some of this, you might experience some of this chatter in your head that says, yeah, best move away from this exercise. I don't know why we would be doing this. Feels kind of scary. That's the part of you that wants to protect you from feeling uncomfortable. It's just trying to do its job. And again, we're not our thoughts. We're the witnessers of all of that stuff. And we can actually provide some compassion to that part of us and say, like, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm just trust this process and back out of it if you need to. Just, there's a guide here. There's somebody here to help you kind of do this stuff. So using the power of our observing self to help us with this acceptance, allow, and expansion. So we got to use that kind of part of us that watches, and it's a very powerful place when we kind of pull back and watch our emotional experiences from that vantage point, from that place. Well, not necessarily place, but from this perspective, I guess, it does this thing that's very fantastic in our brains. I'm not going to bore you with the details of all of this, but when we start to say, I am noticing that I am experiencing sadness, it really is something that is a powerful, powerful force in the human brain. It helps the safety part of your brain come online, and it turns down the volume on the fear part. So the language that we use is really important, really, really important here. So we turn down the volume on the thinking self and turn up the volume on the observing self. And according to the thinking self, the thinking part of us is like, these emotions are giant, they're dangerous. Why would we even go towards that? So we're trying to turn the volume down on that part of us, and we're trying to turn up the volume on the witnessing part of us, because in that place the observing self reveals what they really are, which is they're just emotions, and they're actually, in the grand scheme of life, relatively small and harmless. We just haven't had a whole lot of experience with them yet. So the observing self is willing to do this work, which is really a trump card. So I think we talked about that already. And this is a really good pair with witnessing where things are coming up on your emotional ladder. If you've done any mapping or anything, like, you might actually notice that certain emotions are popping up, and they pop up only when I'm in the middle of my ladder, and certain emotions pop up only when I'm in the bottom of my ladder. And that's a very curious and compassionate exercise. And there's certain emotions that pop up when I'm at the top of my ladder, and we're really able to stand outside and witness and be, oh yeah, that's interesting, that perspective, the witnessing perspective. So when we see ourselves struggling with our experiences, the attachment to the fight, oh, I don't want to feel this emotion, I don't want to feel this emotion, might actually move us into fight and flight. And if we feel like, what's wrong with me, I can't control this emotion, I can't fight it off anymore, it actually might push us into the bottom of the ladder too. So this is fantastic nervous system work. I love how this marries with this. So the upside of acceptance is asking ourselves at this question, what is this experience here to teach me? And with avoidance of the pain, we also lose our healing. So the yin and yang of leaning in to this is, if we decide to lean into this, we might feel uncomfortable for a short period of time. And the light, airy part of this is that this is where our healing lives, is in the lean in. And we will never get the opportunity to ask ourselves, like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder why I'm having this experience. Is it connected to a trauma? I wonder why I'm having this experience. Is it connected to my subconscious saying, hey, it's time to let this thing go, or it's time to let this struggle out of my life, and things like that. So it's with the avoidance that we also don't get this deep interpersonal learning. So if we accept, we have access to the learning, which is super exciting. So the benefit of practicing some acceptance is that we get to have access to the learning. We get to learn how to surf urges and get the experience that they will pass. We get to practice asking ourselves, maybe there's a gift here in this situation that I would never ever see if I was just going in the opposite direction. And the pain actually of certain situations could put us on a path that we never ever knew was possible for us before. So that's a really, really interesting thing for us. And it gets us to make space for our feelings. And, what happens eventually is like, oh yeah, there's that experience again. And they don't bother us so much. We get to move on faster and more rapidly, as opposed to getting hooked to things. And there is the benefits of leaning into emotions and accepting them are fantastic. We get to be more curious, less furious about things, and we have more capacity to do good nervous system mapping and ask ourselves, where do we really want to go? So allowing emotions to be here, and we learn how to ride the waves. It's a very famous quote, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. It's fantastic. So here is the emotional surfing, cues, like this feeling is uncomfortable, but I have the skills to get through this. These are feelings, they can't hurt me. This too shall pass. I've learned some tools. These feelings are here to help us survive, and they'll pass. And so learning some emotional surfing is a really, really great grounding skill. So here's some 6 steps of mindfully dealing with difficult emotions. We turn towards them with acceptance. We give them a label and we identify them. We accept that we're there. We hold them like really delicate little pieces of art. We realize that there's impermanence to this. It's not going to last forever. We inquire and investigate, like, I wonder what that's all about. I wonder why I got triggered so much. Why do I feel this way? And after we do some investigation and we learn how to let things go. So that's really exciting. So when we start to make room for these thoughts and feelings, we actually start to move towards a life that's pretty daring and full of things that are important to us. So I'm going to stop here because we actually have an activity, an audio recording of an activity of this that assists with the steps of expansion. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. You've already done the expansion exercise during one of your times with us. So the expansion exercises are, observing the feelings and actually breathing into it and making room and allowing them to be there. And they are exciting pieces of work. And hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to do one of those yet in our sessions, we'll get a chance to do them very soon. So take good care, and we will be talking very soon.